you're a Godzilla fan right now, you're going to be eating good because you got this movie, you got the Monarch show on Apple TV Plus, and you got a brand new Kong X Godzilla, the new Empire movie coming out at some point next year. So, good to be a Godzilla fan. So Godzilla -1 is a new Japanese Godzilla film created by the Toho studios, who did like the original Godzilla film. As you can see, like right here, this is the original 1954 Godzilla film, a film that I absolutely love. I wouldn't consider myself like a Godzilla like super fan. Like I have a buddy who's a big Godzilla fan. I know he's looking forward to seeing this movie. And a lot of people who I saw this in the theater with last night, like a special fan screening thing in IMAX, were clearly big Godzilla fans, and I was looking so forward to this movie, and I'm sure I'm going to be on the I won't say in the minority, but yeah, I'll be in the minority here probably to talk about this film. It's sitting at like a 98% on Rotten Tomatoes right now. It was like 100% for a while. It went down to 98%. So this film is getting absolutely glowing reviews from people, and I can see why, and we'll get into it. But here's the story. Essentially, Godzilla -1 is a kind of retelling of this Godzilla movie, of the original Godzilla film. It's like Godzilla's semi-origin story. It's not even really about Godzilla. Like this is a more human story. There's a lot of characters in this. Like there is a kamikaze pilot who, through circumstances, doesn't go through with what becoming a kamikaze pilot means. Has to deal with that. There's a lot of post-war stress because it's post-World War II Japan and them rebuilding. And then all of a sudden this monster shows up and starts wrecking shop. It's a lot of human drama in it, and all the while Godzilla shows up to wreck everything even worse than it was before the World War II stuff happened. And it's about this community of people having to take down this monster without the help of like the Japanese government or any other outside forces. They kind of have to band a group together to kind of take down this brand new threat in a Godzilla. And that's essentially your story here. It's almost like every other Godzilla film. And I've realized that Godzilla comes in two forms. Godzilla's either the hero or Godzilla's the villain. And in this particular story, as well as the original, he's the villain. And when I say that this is like a remake of the original, there's definitely lots of notes, a lot of callbacks to that original. The score especially, Godzilla's theme comes in, chef's kiss. That was one of my favorite parts of the movie. The Godzilla himself, I dig the character design. I dig a lot of the stuff they do with him, but I kind of was hoping, and I actually thought this was a more modern version of Godzilla, like a retelling of Godzilla, but in modern times. But it was all takes place from like 1944 to like 1947, so this 3-year span of Godzilla wrecking shop in this area of Japan, and I thought that was all well and interesting. We're going to go through a lot of my problems with this, and it comes with the human side of the story. And I have nothing wrong with the human side of stories because I dig this. And it's the same thing. It's like a lot more human stuff, a lot more drama behind the scenes, and Godzilla just kind of weaves in and out like Jaws, essentially, in the story, and which is fine and perfect. But I just found it so boring. I mean, and it's not that these characters aren't interesting. I think there were elements of every character that was super fascinating, super interesting, but I felt like it was told in some very generic, boring, like, we're just getting through all this exposition stuff, and maybe even, like, we're going to try to attach you to a couple of characters just so we can get to the Godzilla stuff at some point. And you're waiting for a while for some of that Godzilla stuff. I mean, to be upfront with you with that, because if you're going into this thinking it's just going to be Godzilla wrecking shop from beginning to end, it's not. And I'm not saying that was my anticipation. I was hoping it would be a little more Godzilla wrecking shop, but it is more human. And I think for the average moviegoer, it might be a little more boring. And if you're not a fan of the subtitles, because this is a Japanese movie, so you could probably find a dubbed version of this movie in theaters when it's making its run in the States. But it's going to be subtitled, which I have no problem with. I love subtitled movies. And, this is no exception. I had no problem having to read the movie and go along, and hearing the actual Japanese language was so cool here. And maybe a little bit of my issue with the movie was like maybe the acting. It is tough sometimes for acting to translate because in Japan it just seemed a little over the top acting, like some characters like just being maybe a little too overtly excited. But if that's the way the culture is, that's the way the culture is, and it just, I don't know, in terms of putting it on the screen, it just felt a little weird for me. I'm sure a lot of other people will be like, I'm crazy, and I'm sure I'll get those comments. And I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of people calling me crazy for not liking this movie as much as other people do, because I didn't love it at the end of the day. I think 2/3 of this film is spent just dragging feet and like dealing with stuff that I'm just like, this could have been a lot more interesting. And I don't know. If it wasn't as telegraphed, if it wasn't as slow burn as it was, I probably would have been a little more into it. And it's not that I have a problem with slow burns. It works in a lot of cases, this movie in point. But it's just for whatever reason, this particular viewing, as I watched it, I did not dig a lot of what was happening in this movie. I found it very boring. I just wasn't digging it. But I will give this movie this. The third act of this film absolutely kicks ass. I absolutely dug the third act, though, with Godzilla and all these people are, coming to a head, wrecking shop. It is absolutely awesome. I gotta give it that. I even let the theater go, and you know what? At least the third act was good. And I'm gonna even admit right up front, I probably might need to see this again. For whatever reason, it's just sometimes you see a movie one time and it just doesn't grab you. But there's so many elements that I'm like, this should have worked for me, but it didn't. That maybe, I don't know, if it was my frame of mind, maybe, I don't know if it was just the crowd I was with wasn't as, as fun as I maybe was hoping. I don't know. It could be a plethora of factors for anybody going into a movie, but I would consider watching this again. Just to gauge and see if I still feel the same way. Because like this, it is essentially a remake of this movie that I love. And for whatever reason, it just didn't translate the way I would have hoped for. Again, great third act. Everything else was just slow and boring. I just didn't connect with it. Even though like the emotion and a lot of the character, the threads are there. It just didn't connect and weave the way I think it could have. But clearly, a lot of other people don't feel the same way, and that's fine. I'm actually jealous that people like came out of this loving it, and I'm just like, yeah, it was all right. Third act was awesome. It was all right. Like, whatever. But so at the end of the day, I'm gonna give this film a B minus. I know, a scary B minus. It's so bad. B minus isn't terrible. Like, I think there's so much good stuff in this. The fact that it was like made for like about $15 million. I don't know if that's yen or translated to American dollars, but $15 million to make this movie is absolutely insane. I hope it cleans up at the box office, because I thought the lore is pretty interesting. I think that this version of Godzilla is absolutely fascinating and different from like the version we're getting right now in like the Monarch series and the Monsterverse movie that the Warner Brothers and Legendary Pictures has been making the last few years. And I love that version of Godzilla, but I do like and appreciate that we have this version of Godzilla. One of my big issues though with this Godzilla, and I'm sorry, I'm sure, I mean, it's kind of cool, but at the same time, I thought it was a little unnecessary for Godzilla to, when he does his atomic breath, that his scales like start popping out, like telegraphing he's about to launch a stinking laser beam. I just thought that was a little much in terms of what Godzilla has to, could do. Otherwise, there's some stuff that Godzilla does in this. I'm like, this is interesting. I don't know if this has ever been part of the lore, but this is like a standalone, brand new version of Godzilla, just retelling that original story, essentially, with better special effects. And don't get me wrong, the special effects for a $15 million movie are awesome. Just, there's definitely some stuff I'm like, that could have used a little polishing. But again, for $15 million, shoot, this is as good as it's going to get for $15 million. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Godzilla -1. What do you guys think? Have you gone out to see Godzilla -1? Do you want to see Godzilla -1? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And as always, guys, hit that like button, subscribe button, the little bell notification to be notified whenever I drop new videos. It would be greatly appreciated. And until the next review, guys, I'll be seeing you.